Excellencies, dignitaries, experts, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone joining from different time zones. I welcome you all to this policy dialogue on deciphering the interlinkage of climate change, hunger, and poverty as an official side event of the High Level Political Forum 2024. This event is organized by India Water Foundation and is supported by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, Japan Development Cooperation Agency, and Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. And we are grateful to them for their support. Climate change poses unprecedented challenges to the world's agri-food systems. Rising temperatures, changing rainfall pattern, and more frequent extreme weather events threaten agricultural production as well as the biodiversity and ecosystem services. These growing climate risks impact food security, nutrition, and human health, as well as livelihoods. Because these impacts are not evenly distributed, climate change also contributes to growing inequalities by gender, socioeconomic status, and other characteristics. For farmers, climate change makes agriculture a riskier source of income, disrupts livelihoods, and contributes to hunger and malnutrition. Historically, people have been forced to flee their homes due to civil wars, political instability, poverty, and hunger. But the growing number of extreme weather events linked to climate change are now increasingly contributing to migration. How do we address the challenges emanating from this interlinkage? What are the actions and what level should they be taken at if we want to break this vicious cycle? What kind of efforts are needed in planning and implementation to address this issue? These are some of the many questions for which we will try to find answers for in this policy dialogue. Before initiating this policy dialogue, I request Dr. Arvind Kumar, President, India Water Foundation, to present an overview of this dialogue. Dr. Kumar is a strategist and key influencer in development sector with more than 29 years of experience as an author, columnist, water and human rights proactivist, and specializes in concepts like ecosystem-based adaptation, water energy food nexus, with specific emphasis on transversal approach of interlinkage between water, environment, and SDGs. He has published over 500 plus research articles and several books, the latest out of which is a publication on ecosystem-based adaptation for Elsevier. He's a proud recipient of Achievers Award for his contribution to the environment from International Human Rights Organization in collaboration with United Nations Information Center, India. Dr. Kumar, please.
Thank you, Sweta. Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Tedros, Director General, WHO, Dr. Amit Ghosh, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, and all other dignitaries, welcome to this high-level policy dialogue. Climate change threatens to decrease agriculture productivity, increase food insecurity, and challenge the livelihoods and the survival of the poor people, particularly smallholder farmers, livestock keepers, and the landless in least developed countries. This is promoting some to seek livelihoods elsewhere and may trap others' poverty. As per the 2024 Global Poverty Update from the World Bank, an estimated 23 million more people were living in extreme poverty. The fight to end poverty and hunger through agriculture has become more difficult with the challenge of climate change, conflict, economic shocks, and climate extremes are contributing to create a food crisis of unprecedented proportions. As many as 309 million people are facing chronic hunger in 72 countries. Ending poverty, hunger, and malnutrition and climate change have to be tackled simultaneously. Droughts and floods and the impact they have on infrastructure, health, and diseases are felt most by the poor, and the climate change hinders their ability to produce food and their access to resources and basic life necessities. While the impact of climate change affect every country on every continent, they don't do it equally. People already burdened by poverty oppression after suffer the hardest consequences. While having the least ability to cope, they struggle to earn a living, uh, feed their families, and create stable homes is made more difficult every day by climate crisis continuing. Poverty is one result of inequality and manifests in a myriad of ways. Malnutrition, hunger, discrimination, lack of access to education and healthcare are just a few of the ways it can manifest. Still, the people most at risk are persisting despite it, fighting to grow food, maximizing dwindling resources, and withstand recurring diseases. The actions people in hard hit regions are taking every day to overcome the burden of the climate crisis are just as vital as widespread solutions. The world is gradually coming to terms with the fact that it cannot avoid the impact of climate change. Climate change adaptation and mitigation capacities are dependent on countries' economic needs. Addressing the climate crisis require more than business as usual in the area of food security. Environment and the sustainable development are broadly poverty and hunger need to be tackled on the global scale. This would yield ripple benefits that will also manifest as climate action. Planning processes and plans should integrate climate change across sectors, include improvement of policies in labor, land, natural resources, and the resettlement, enable the participation of vulnerable populations, adhere to internationally agreed principles and human rights instruments, and engage all levels of government and in range of ministries, including in capacity building efforts, support and promote resilient livelihoods and food security with the sustainable livelihood diversification, climate resilience, sustainable agriculture, strengthen and expand disaster risk reduction and links with long-term development of incorporating early warning system and disaster risk reduction into development. The step we take now as a global community will determine our resilience for the future. I request Dr. Amit Ghosh, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, to give his welcome address as our partner for this event. Thank you.
You are muted, huh?
I think you are muted.
My bad. Sorry. Our next speaker, Shri Amit Ghosh, is Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, and is responsible for formulating schemes and programs for the welfare of the disadvantaged sections of the society. He is an electronics engineer from the Andhra University, Visakhapatnam, MSc in Public Management and Governance from London School of Economics, and MA in Defense Studies from Meerut University. Mr. Ghosh, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a warm welcome to all of you to this high-level policy dialogue on deciphering the interlinkage of climate change, hunger and poverty, organized by the India Water Foundation under the aegis of the United Nations High-Level Political Forum 2024. We are indeed honored to have with us a distinguished panel of guests whose expertise and commitment to sustainable development inspire us all. Allow me to extend a special welcome to Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization. It's an honor to have you with us, sir. Mr. Ricardo Mezziano, Sustainable Development Officer at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for the Asia and the Pacific UNESCAP. Dr. Satya Tripathi, Secretary General of the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. Mr. Swante Helms, National Pathways Coordinator of the United Nations Food Systems Coordination Hub. Dr. Nagesh Kumar, Director of the Institute for Studies in Industrial Development. Mr. Katsuo Matsumoto, Director General of the Japan International Cooperation Agency JICA. Mr. Ruhiza Boroto, Senior Land and Water Officer, Land and Water Division, Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Additionally, I would like to make a special mention of Dr. Arvind Kumar, President of the India Water Foundation, whose vision, leadership and untiring efforts have been instrumental in organizing this significant event. Your presence here today underscores the global commitment to addressing a challenge that knows no borders or demographic boundaries. The intricate nexus of climate change, hunger, poverty, and their profound implications for social justice. Let me say at this point that the essence of sustainable development lies in empowering all individuals and communities, ensuring their basic rights to live without poverty, hunger, and the adverse impacts of climate change. And if I may say so, this is not just about survival, it is about justice, equality, and the opportunity for every person to lead a fulfilling life with dignity. As we strive to achieve these goals, we are not just building a more sustainable world, we are creating a foundation for a just and equitable society for all. This is a great ambition, a great task in the service of humanity, and I am so privileged to be associated with you through this dialogue today. In the quest to achieve a sustainable future hinged on the pillars of social justice, the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment of the Government of India has implemented a series of initiatives that align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Particularly, I would like to mention SDG 1, which is about no poverty, SDG 2, which is about ending hunger, SDG 10, which focuses on reduction of inequalities, and SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 16, which is about peace, justice, and strong institutions. In our own way, the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment is contributing to the global efforts in these areas. Our commitment to eradicating poverty is demonstrated through the substantial support that we give to the marginalized communities in India. In the year 2023, the post-matric and pre-matric scholarship schemes for students from the scheduled castes was extended to 52 lakh beneficiaries, with scholarships totaling approximately rupees 3,915 crore, thereby significantly boosting their educational and economic prospects. We have another scheme, the PM Ajay Yojana. Under this scheme, we invest in employment generation, skill development, and improving the socio-economic conditions in such villages where a substantial number of people belonging to the scheduled caste reside. The focus is on fostering sustainable economic growth. This scheme has last year implemented 3,132 projects, thereby benefiting more than 114,000 beneficiaries belonging to these marginalized sections of the society. Addressing hunger is another priority of the Government of India, and the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment, through its scholarship schemes and also through another scheme called the Shrestha scheme, provides not only financial support to the students but also support for residential living in hostels specially constructed and run for such students from marginalized communities, thereby ensuring that they get proper nutrition and which would lead to their holistic development. Climate action is also indirectly integrated into our initiatives. We have a scheme called the Namaste scheme. Under this scheme, we promote mechanized sanitation. We have a vision that people who have been for more than 1 or 2 generations involved in cleaning of sewer lines, soak pits, etc., or earlier they were engaged with manual scavenging, all this should end. We have won our battle against manual scavenging, but now we wish to go further, and we have a motto, from manhole to machine hole. Therefore, we are promoting mechanized sanitation, and for which we are providing extensive support to all the municipal bodies across the country, thereby promoting the protection of both human health and the environment. We have another scheme, a very large scheme called the PM Daksh Yojana, the Prime Minister's skilling program of our department, where we train individuals from these marginalized communities to run sustainable job roles, including green jobs. And in the last financial year, we trained more than 55,000. Interestingly, out of these 55,000, 37,000 were women. So we are also promoting equality at the gender level. Not only this, we are committed to protecting the civil rights, and we have a very robust Protection of Civil Rights Act and the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act to safeguard the marginalized communities and to enable them to participate actively in various actions and creating resilient communities which can adapt to the climate changes which are being experienced. These success stories and best practices demonstrate significant impacts on the marginalized communities, inspiring further action and replication of effective models. But there are challenges, which include, if I may say so, deep-rooted social inequalities, geographical barriers, lack of awareness, and resource constraints. They all impact the effective implementation of various programs. Hence, partnership with the state governments in our country, NGOs, civil society organizations, and the private sector are also part of our implementation strategy, and I would say that they are very important for enhancing outreach, improving service delivery, and fostering community participation. Future directions, to my mind, would include scaling up successful programs, addressing emerging challenges, and leveraging new opportunities to accelerate progress towards social justice and empowerment. By integrating climate considerations into social justice initiatives, the ministry aims to break the cycle of poverty, empower communities, and build a just and equitable future where social justice and environmental sustainability go hand in hand. In conclusion, I would like to say that the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment is committed to forging a path towards a future where social justice and environmental sustainability go hand in hand, ensuring no one is left behind in the face of climate change. Through these initiatives, the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment of Government of India aims to build resilience, enhance livelihoods, ensure food security, and promote inclusion for marginalized and vulnerable communities across India. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I wish you all the very best in your efforts to build a more sustainable foundation for our global community. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh, for apprising us of the initiatives and the remarkable work that Government of India is doing for the vulnerable sections of the society, especially for hunger and poverty. Thank you so much. And now I'm pleased to inform you all that we have a very wonderful message from Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General World Health Organization. He's the first person from WHO African region to head the world's leading public health agency. So I'll just play his message.
Esteemed guests, dear colleagues and friends, my thanks to Dr. Kumar and the India Water Foundation for convening this dialogue and for highlighting the intimate links between water and the other SDGs. Climate resilient water and sanitation services are a basic requirement for human health, a first line of defense against the spread of disease, a driver of economic development, and a contributor to food security. Yet, 2 billion people lack safe drinking water. More than 3.5 billion people are without safely managed sanitation, and 2 billion people have no way to wash their hands. The consequences are deadly, with 1.4 million people dying every year from preventable infections. Globally, we're far off track to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goal for water and sanitation. But there are solutions. Sustainable public investment, responsible management, clear data, and accountable governance are fundamental to deliver universal access to water and sanitation. Around the world, WHO is supporting many countries to make progress toward this SDG 6, especially in the poorest and most fragile context. We also produce guidance on the safe use of wastewater to protect health and support agricultural productivity. Like health, water and sanitation are a human right. Thank you all for your leadership and partnership in realizing that right for all people. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tedros, for your wonderful message. And we are really indebted to you. My next speaker is Dr. Katsuo Matsumoto, Director General Infrastructure Engineering Department, Japan International Cooperation Agency. He had been the chief representative of JICA India office from June 2018 to August 21. He has worked for the official development assistance projects in ASEAN and the South Asian countries, including regional corridor projects for the past 30 years. He obtained a master's degree from Columbia University in the US and a PhD from University of Tokyo. Dr. Matsumoto, please. We can see your screen, Mr. Matsumoto, but we are not able to hear you. I'm sorry, we are unable to hear you, sir. Can you hear me? But we can't hear you somehow. No. Can other of my panelists hear Dr. Matsumoto? Because I'm unable to hear him. Dr. Kumar, can you hear him?
No, we can't hear him. No.
No, no. Sir, please, can you just do one thing? You leave the meeting and please join again. Maybe there is some network issue or something. In the meantime, I'll invite Dr. Satya S. Tripathi, Secretary General of the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet, a development economist, lawyer, and change maker with over 40 years of varied experience. Mr. Tripathi is also the Chancellor of Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences and Senior Distinguished Fellow on Innovative Finance at the World Agroforestry Center. He has served with the UN for more than 2 decades in key positions and was most recently the UN Assistant Secretary General, head of the New York office at UN Environment, and Secretary of the UN Environment Management Group. Dr. Tripathi, please.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me? Wonderful. Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know you're connecting from different parts of the world on something of great significance to humanity. I'm based in New York, of course, so it's very early morning for me, but I realize that there are people connecting from across the planet, and that's also a very important thing to note, because while we may be spread across different geographies, different countries, different continents, our challenges remain the same when we talk about SDGs and when we talk about water, and especially the way water interacts with different SDGs. Now, one of the things that people do not talk about often is that the SDGs are all interlinked. They are there are 17, of course, as we all know, 169 targets, and then but when they were being formulated, and I was a part of that conversation process, supporting the high-level panel on the post-2015 development agenda, which would ultimately lead to the SDGs. And in that, as it was being formulated, there was a lot of debate around what should be on top of the agenda, because if there are 17, maybe SDG 1 and 2 need to be the most significant ones, because when people open the book on SDGs, that's what they see first, and then that's how there was a consensus built among the countries and their representatives that we should have no poverty on top of the agenda, and goal 2 will be zero hunger. But that doesn't make the other SDGs less important or less consequential, but just that these should be on top of our mind when we are looking at every other SDGs, because all other SDGs put together should actually feed into making the world an equitable place, which means no poverty. We can't have this significant distinction between the rich and the poor, where 1% of the population, depending on the country, has anywhere between 40 to 90% of the wealth. And then globally also, that number is rather significant. If you take the top 10%, and 90%, they own 90% of the world in private wealth terms. And that's unacceptable in any civilized, equitable, and just society.
And that's why poverty and zero hunger, no poverty and zero hunger went onto the top of the agenda, because every other SDG would then feed into this, keeping people fed so that they can lead a meaningful life, and that there should be no poverty, because that would then mean that the society is more just, more equitable, and everybody has both a right and an opportunity to achieve the best of what they have to offer, both their families, but their communities and their countries and the planetary society at large. But what we've seen, last year we had this review, the midterm review, kind of, which was pushed back because it's supposed to happen every 5 years, but it was pushed back because of COVID. And so now we looked at the climate change review, which was also the same from the Paris Agreement 2015, and also the midterm review of the SDGs, which happened in 2023. What we found was that there are too few targets and goals that are actually likely to be achieved, and of course, depending on how you analyzed it, some say 14%, some say 16, some say 18, but no matter how you frame it, it is still under 20% of the goals that are on track to being achieved. Doesn't mean that they're achieved, that they're on track to being achieved by 2030, and the others are not even on track. And the worst are, of course, poverty, the no poverty and zero hunger goals, goal 1 and 2. And that is why this interlinkage between climate change, hunger, and poverty is so crucial. And of course, water plays a central role in that conversation, because that's what we need to survive at the very basic level. And of course, even if you're looking at higher levels of engagement and utilization and productivity, you need water for every industrial process. The very few industrial processes that do not require water. Everything, even if you're producing oxygen or hydrogen or anything, it's all about water. Whether you are breaking up water into its molecular components, or you use water at the very basic level to survive. And it's not just for humans, it's for all other species. So that's why in this HLPF, this conversation is so very important, because as climate change progresses, and this year we already saw in many parts of the world, and of course summer has gone in some parts of the world where they have the rainy season and monsoons have set in. But in many parts of the world, like in New York, when you get outside your building, you get a blast of hot air. New York was not like this 20 years ago. And I can say this from personal experience, because I have been here 20 years ago and 40 years ago, and I have seen what New York was and what it is right now. And it is getting worse and worse and worse. And we need to keep in mind that climate change, although it looks like a distant problem, somebody else's problem physically, and even conceptually, a lot of people struggle to understand what it really means. Yes, it's global warming, but if I live in a cold place, it should be fine for me. I'll get better weather for a greater part of the year. Not true. Because the ecosystems we see around ourselves, whether we are in cold climates or hot climates or temperate climates, the ecosystems we see around ourselves exist within a range of tolerance. We talk about temperature, there's a range of tolerance. All the elements of nature, there's a range of tolerance. And you breach that range of tolerance, you die as a species, whether it's a plant species, animal species, humans, it doesn't matter. Every species has a range of tolerance. And so as global warming increases, and we saw that in the summer months in many parts of the world, the temperatures breached 50 degrees Celsius, which is extraordinary, hadn't been seen before. In some parts, rare occurrences, but not in a regular way. Day after day after day, we saw that. And then that then becomes very difficult. Of course, people that are rich can afford to live in controlled climates, air conditioning and this and that. That's under 5% of the population of the world that can afford it. The other 95% have to live and contend with the elements for their survival. And if you talk about, leave the humans and talk about the other 8 million species, they all live outside, except for some domesticated animals that may live within our homes. Everybody else lives outside in the lap of Mother Nature, and they have to contend with the global warming and the challenges it presents. So that is why, we really need to think exponential. We need to think what transformative changes must occur in the next 5 to 10 years time frame, so that we can not only deal with the challenge of climate change, but we also need be able to meet some of the SDGs. I don't think there is any hope of pretending or lying that we'll achieve all the SDGs by 2030. That is simply not going to happen. If by midterm we have under 20% of the SDGs that are on track, I really don't think in the next 6 years we're going to achieve such great progress that the SDGs will be met. But at least let us make an effort to do the best we can and achieve as much as we can, because the SDGs and climate change are interlinked. Without dealing with climate change, without engendering climate action in everything we do, whether it's the public or the private sector and the various stakeholders, whether it's education, research institutions, whether it is governments at multiple layers, local, national, regional, like SAARC or ASEAN or the African Union or the European Union or the global level, the United Nations and everybody else. And that is the minimum we need to do, that climate action must happen at all levels, in all segments of the society, without blaming each other. You are responsible, I'm not responsible. Yes, maybe some people are actually bad actors and they have contributed a lot to climate change and inequality and the lack of justice and everything else in the society we live in. But the time is, while that debate is a just debate and we must have that in different fora, but we need to dedicate most of our energies to find solutions, because a negative energy is sometimes useful to deal with your grief and your anger, your annoyance, your disappointment with the society we live in. But positive energy is what should drive us in changing our immediate environment, because a problem created by 8 billion people is not going to be solved by a few governments and a few organizations and a few companies. We all have to come together and act as one whole that is moving singularly with the dedicated purpose of dealing with climate action and preventing poverty and hunger, because any civilized society can't have people dying of hunger and a significant segment of the population being completely mired in poverty, because that's not the way to live. That's not the way to claim ourselves as a global civilized society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tripathi. And you have very rightly put these facts in front of all of us, that we cannot deny climate change. It's happening, it's now, and we need concrete actions, definitely. Thank you so much. Dr. Katsuo Matsumoto, can we see your presentation again? And will we be able to hear you now? No, we are not able to hear you. So again, I'll suggest that if you can just leave this meeting and then join again. Maybe there is something wrong with the, sometimes it happens, the audio hangs. So you need to rejoin. It's going to correct itself. I'm so sorry, this is not working from your end. So we'll have our next speaker, Dr. Nagesh Kumar, Director and Chief Executive of the Institute for Studies in Industrial Development. Prior to taking up this role, Dr. Kumar served as Director at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission of Asia and the Pacific, holding several senior management roles as Chief Economist, Director of Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development Division and Social Development Division at the UNESCAPE headquarters in Bangkok, and also as head of the South and Southwest Asia office located in New Delhi, that he also had the privilege of establishing. So, Dr. Nagesh Kumar, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I must say that it's a pleasure to join this high-level side event for HLPF. And what an important theme you have chosen for it, hunger and poverty, and how they are linked with climate change. I think this is a very timely theme to debate upon. And I must congratulate India Water Foundation and all other partners for lining up a very impressive list of thought leaders to reflect on this theme. And I'm very delighted to be part of it. Now, listening to the previous speakers, I think my mind went back to the link between the climate change and poverty and hunger. I think the link is established or reinforced by the fact that the low-income countries and low-middle-income countries like India uh, have very high levels of informality or pervasive informality, which means that a large section of their society has people who are not covered by any social protection or social security. In India, the proportion of informality is 86%. So 86% of the people in India do not have any cover of social security. So if there is any shock, whether it is pandemic or whether it is extreme climate kind of events, droughts or floods or anything. So these are the people who are hit, who are the first ones to be hit, and they have no cover of social security. So though they get into poverty and hunger is another consequence of that. So basically, what is the solution? Solution is in creating decent jobs, adequate decent jobs, which come with the social security, adequate social security and protection, which is which helps them to escape the pernicious effects of any extreme weather events or other shocks like the pandemic we have passed through. And when you talk of the decent jobs, one obviously thinks about the structural transformation of economy, which is the process which underpins the economic development, process of economic development. There was an economist, the lot of economic discussion on development actually has been revolving around the structural transformation, where workers shift from low productivity activities like agriculture to higher productivity activities like manufacturing and services. And in that process, they get access to better paying jobs, jobs which come with social security and protection. So we need to focus our attention on creating decent jobs. And for that, industrialization is something we need to focus on. And in this current context of climate change and carbon constrained world, the industrialization can't be something of a business as usual type of industrialization or the conventional path to industrialization. So it has to be green industrialization or green structural transformation. And in that context, I think, one looks around and there are many countries around the world which are pursuing green industrialization, including India. And when we talk of green industrialization, because there are very significant market failures in industrialization and especially green industrialization, because the investors, private sector people cannot reap full harvest of their investments. Society also benefits from their investments. And actually, the global economy benefits from their actions if they are investing in sustainable industrialization. So there is a divergence of, the investments and the returns. And this divergence, meaning the market failures, so that has to be bridged by, government intervention or subsidies or incentives or all kinds of subsidization. And you see that happening around the world. United States government, which used to be a champion of free markets and free trade, is now pursuing industrial policy or strategic interventions to promote green industries and other industries creating jobs in the country through acts like CHIPS Act, CHIPS and Science Act, Inflation Reduction Act, and Infrastructure Act. In between these three acts, they have put on the table $1.2 trillion to be given to industry for developing green industry in the form of tax breaks and subsidies. Similarly, in India, to promote green industries, our government has several policies that include production-linked incentives for producing solar photovoltaic panels, solar PV cells and panels, the green mobility solutions, green hydrogen solutions, the electric vehicles of different forms and different types, and the batteries, the storage solutions. So all kinds of new industries are being promoted, and that is where through these policies we can hope to generate not only incomes and prosperity for the country, but more decent jobs, and also helping in climate change, mitigation and decarbonization of industry or industrial production. India being a country which is highly dependent on imported hydrocarbons, and we spend some $350 billion on importing all kinds of raw materials, especially the hydrocarbons. And so our clean transition, besides creating green jobs, decent jobs, and incomes and prosperity and decarbonization, also helps in reducing dependence on imports and saving very precious foreign exchange. So there are co-benefits of saving foreign exchange, and then pollution, because in the process of producing energy through coal, burning of coal through thermal power plants, we create a lot of pollution, and all of us who live in Delhi face it every winter when the air pollution or air quality levels go down very badly. So there are co-benefits of that. So I think investing in green industries is a very important, sort of option for developing countries like India, which helps to create, prosperity or incomes, decent jobs, and also doing that while decarbonizing the society. But there are some lessons to be learned from our experience of green industrialization in the past 4, 5, 6 years. One is that these green products, whether it is solar PV cells or electric vehicles or electric battery, the EV batteries and all that, they tend to be, and also LED bulbs, when they started, to come to the market, they were very expensive. So they tend to be very expensive to begin with, all of these products. And so they need to be, supported, not only from the supply side, that you produce more of these products, but also from the demand side. And so industrial policy usually comprises of only supply side elements or supply side intervention. But for green industrial policy, we need to also pay attention to demand side interventions. And this is exactly what we have learned from our experience in India. So, for instance, when LED bulbs were being promoted, there was very little demand for them because they were 3 times or 4 times more expensive. But government started a scheme that you buy them cheaply from some designated stores, and that way the scales were built up. scales allowed the cost to come down, and then there was no need for the subsidies. Similarly, for EVs, to popularize EVs, government has a scheme called FAME, faster adoption of electric mobility. That subsidizes these electric vehicles, and it is helping to bring down their cost and facilitating their faster adoption. Similarly, for solar power, there is this very impressive program of long-term power purchase agreements of 20 years. So the producers are guaranteed good price for the electricity that their solar power plant will generate for 20 years. And so that way the risks are hedged. So these are some of the lessons of green industrial policies which need to be adopted by all different developing countries in their effort or plan to achieve more inclusive and more sustainable levels of economic development, achieving SDGs, and in that process creating more inclusive, more sustainable prosperity, and which is also decarbonizing the economies. And so this theme that you have chosen, I think there are many aspects of that theme, and one would be the pursuit of green industrial policies. I think that is something one should pay a lot of attention to, because it will help us achieve a lot of objectives, together: poverty, hunger, informality, the inequalities, and sustainable development, climate change mitigation, and all other co-benefits, as I said, reduction in dependence on foreign exchange and imports, and bringing down the air pollution levels. So with these few words, let me turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, especially for speaking about the informal sector who's working without any social protection in a country like India, and where 86% of the people are in the informal sector without social protection. That's really alarming. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. Katinka Wienberger, Chief of Sustainable Socioeconomic Transformation Section of UNESCAPE. Prior to the position, she was Chief of the Environment and Development Division of ESCAPE. She has 25 years of experience in agriculture, environment, and sustainable development at international level, working through multi-stakeholder processes and focusing on the interconnections of economic, social, and environmental dimensions of development. Dr. Wienberger, please.
Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in this event. In my response, I will focus on the role of social protection in addressing the interlinkages between climate change, hunger, and poverty. Poverty, measured both in monetary and non-monetary terms, is on the rise again for the first time in decades. In Asia and the Pacific, some 156 million people have fallen into moderate poverty in 2022 due to the COVID-19 pandemic impacts, the cost of living crisis, and also the climate crisis. What we see is that inequality is widening in all of its forms, including in respect to income, wealth, and access to opportunities. And what unfortunately we also see is that the negative consequences of climate change are felt disproportionately by people in vulnerable situations. Even under a 1.5-degree global warming scenario, which according to projections is likely to be surpassed, 85% of the Asia-Pacific region's population is expected to be exposed to multi-hazard risks. And here it will especially be the women, people with disabilities, children, the elderly that will be impacted. So against that, I would like to emphasize the importance of social protection, which plays a catalytic role in reducing and preventing poverty and inequality, as well as social exclusion that can emanate from risks and shocks. This is actually well recognized by the international community, which has positioned social protection as a key enabler to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and is also reflected in SDG 1.3, SDG 1 being one of the goals under in-depth review this year here at the HUPS. So why do we need to discuss social protection in the context of climate change and a just transition? While mitigation efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are essential, as we all know, to address the climate crisis, such policies can also have far-reaching effects, including potential job losses and shifts in economic structures. Sectors expected to go through a significant transition in Asia and the Pacific include agriculture, construction, transport, and energy. While some industries may decline, others, such as sustainable energy and green construction, however, offer significant job opportunities. So social protection, coupled with active labor market policies, can ensure that affected communities are integrated into environmentally friendly shifts and help manage work and life transitions, and thus ensure that they are just. Integrating climate action, environmental, economic, and social protection policy and initiatives addressing issues around poverty and hunger alleviation offers a really great potential to strengthen people's resilience and enable the transformative changes that we want and we also need. So in other words, without social protection, new and emerging risks are likely to have devastating impacts on the social fabric of the region, are likely to contribute to increasing poverty and hunger, and in particular will affect population groups already in vulnerable situations, such as children, women, and persons with disabilities. Therefore, governments should strengthen legislative and policy frameworks on social protection, for example, by ratifying relevant ILO conventions, reviewing current legislation, and addressing legal barriers. But social protection will also need to evolve to mitigate the challenges ahead. Making social protection fit for the future starts with the establishment of a universal social protection floor, which is anchored in legislative and policy frameworks. Universal non-contributory programs would be an effective way to ensure that everybody, especially poor and those at risk of falling into poverty, have access to income security when needed. Some key areas to future-proof social protection include embedding universal social protection into national development agendas, including climate policies, and allocate more resources. We really need strong political commitment for social protection to be recognized as a multifaceted policy tool to address emerging vulnerabilities in the presence of climate change. Social dialogue and engagement of civil society and stakeholders will be central to ensuring that effective solutions can be found. Secondly, we need integrated social protection schemes. Countries need to design integrated social protection schemes that forge greater linkages with different social services, such as care and support services, education, health, nutrition, or employment, as well as climate policies. This requires stronger cross-sectoral and interministerial collaboration. An iterative and integrated approach across governments is key, particularly to reach population groups at the highest risk of being left behind. And thirdly, we need to build capacities to address climate risks. Governments need capacities to identify, forecast, and address climate risks, as well as new vulnerabilities that are related to health, food, income security, and human mobility. This will require better linkages with early warning systems and a better understanding of intersectional inequalities and how they relate to climate risks, especially for vulnerable groups such as women, children, and the elderly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wienberger. for your, again, reminding us about the social protection schemes, which should be part of every process and planning in every country. Thank you so much. My next speaker is Mr. Swante Helms, National Pathway Manager of the UN Food Systems Hub. He leads the Hub's country assistance and coordination of country support with other food system actors. He's in direct contact with national conveners and governments, UN agencies, IFIs, CSOs, and other actors at country level. And he's engaging with food system coalitions and networks on how best to provide country assistance. He brings 18 years of experience with the UN. Mr. Helms will make a presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dignitaries and distinguished participants. I'm very pleased to be part of here today, and I first want to thank the India Water Foundation for the invitation to speak to this very important and relevant theme on the interlinkages between climate change, hunger, food, and poverty. I'll start with my presentation here with a couple of slides on the status of food systems and the impact of economic shocks, climate crisis, and conflicts on hunger and poverty, and then look at how food system transformation can act as an accelerator for the SDG implementation and climate action. And finally, I want to give you an example of an initiative from the UN Food System Hub on converging the food system transformation and the climate agenda. Perhaps you can put it in presentation mode, and then I'll proceed from here. Next slide, please. Okay, so global food systems are really under significant strain, confronted by a combination of factors from COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and natural disasters, rising hunger, escalating inflation, and a cost of living crisis, unrest, and conflicts that all, when combined, are hindering our progress towards the SDG by 2030. The hidden costs of social, economic, and environmental cost of food systems reach a staggering $12 trillion, undermining decades of global progress in human well-being, and sustainability. Over 3.1 billion people, or 42% of the population, cannot afford a healthy diet. Meanwhile, food systems continue to generate soil, water, and air pollution, contributing to more than 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions and as much as 80% of biodiversity loss. And in 2023, around 9% of the world's population, or an estimated 757 million people, faced chronic hunger, which is a rise of more than 100 million people from pre-pandemic time back in 2019. Fragile contexts are at the center of this current global hunger and food security crisis. The 1.9 billion people that are living in fragile contexts accounts for 24% of the population, but 73% of the world's extreme poor. And 2/3 of people facing hunger today are living in countries affected by fertility. 309 million people are facing acute hunger in 2024, and this is more or less the same number as it was in 2023 and 2022, but it's still 200 million more than at pre-pandemic level, so from 2019. Now, the many crises involving overlapping issues driving hunger and the interplay between conflict, economic shocks, and the impact of climate crisis are really vital to understand the scale of the challenge. So I want to show you over the next couple of slides a couple of important statistics here to really undermine this point. Next slide, please. So I hope you can see the figures here. So what we got here is a summary of the global prices and indices of today. And you can see that food prices today is 31% higher than it was at pre-COVID times. Fertilizers are 19% higher, And for instance, the price of rice today is 50% higher than at pre-COVID times. So the main message here is really that the global food prices and global prices of agriculture inputs still are at crisis level. Next slide, please. So if we look at food inflation, we can see that in 113 countries out of 168 countries, we have a 4-year food inflation that is higher than 25%. In 39 countries, we have a 4-year food inflation that is higher than 50%. So that's, for example, in Laos and Rwanda. 27 countries, we have a food inflation that is higher than 100%. This is Sri Lanka, Ethiopia, and Gaza. And we have 5 countries that have a food inflation higher than 500%. That includes Lebanon, Syria, and Sudan. So as we can see here, food prices have dramatically increased in many places around the globe. Next slide, please. Now, together with weather extremes, conflicts, and insecurity are the most significant drivers of food crisis, resulting in long-term consequences and spillover effects across borders. As you can see here, the number of active violent conflicts is on the rise, and they're also becoming more severe and protracted. So if you look at the figure from 22, this is actually the highest number of conflicts we have had since the Second World War, 55 conflicts in 22. Next slide, please. 68% of the population that are facing acute food insecurity are living in countries affected by fragility. And equally important, 2/3 of those who are chronically hungry are living in countries affected by fragility. So in other words, the majority of the over 750 million people who are chronically hungry, and the majority of those 300 million people who are suffering from acute food insecurity are living in the 60 fragile countries and territories. And if we take a climate change perspective on this, we know that 12 of the 20 of the most vulnerable countries to climate change are also affected by armed conflict. And we can understand this overlap between conflicts and vulnerability to climate change by recognizing that many of the people and the communities and countries that are affected by fragility and conflict are on the front line of the climate crisis and also among the least resourced to cope with climate shocks and stresses. Next slide, please. Now, let's take a closer look here at the climate shocks that we are facing today. We can see here that they have increased fairly sharply since the 60s. And this increasing frequency and intensity of climate shocks means more and more people are bearing the brunt of the climate crisis. And where we, from 1964 to 1983, had an average of 76 climate-related disasters yearly, this rose to an average of 339 climate-related disasters a year from 2004 and up to today. Next slide, please. So if we look at what kind of disasters are really driving this, these includes, as you can see here, primarily floods and storms, but also landslides and droughts, and new shocks linked to the global heating, such as extreme temperature and wildfires. As you can see here by the numbers of disasters that are represented by the bubbles. Next slide, please. Now, to better understand what is really the impact of these climate shocks, we can look at the number of displacement of people. So this figure here shows back from 2023 that disasters caused 2.3 million internally displaced people, with the vast majority caused by floods and storms, which really marks a worrying trend of more and more people that are forced to flee because of climate change. Next slide, please. Now, moving from the impact of climate change and conflicts and economic shocks on the SDG 1 and 2, and to the food system transformation as an accelerator for SDG implementation and climate action. Next slide, please. So food system transformation has been identified as one of the 6 key accelerators to achieve the SDGs by 2030 by the Secretary General. And this really reflects what was also mentioned in one of the previous presentations, the interconnectedness between the SDGs, where transforming food systems can create positive ripple effects across multiple development priorities simultaneously. For instance, sustainable agricultural practices can improve food security, reduce environmental impacts, and boost rural livelihoods. Next slide, please. So in the next slides here, I really want to talk a bit about the food system agenda and what kind of instruments we have to put this in place and elevate this agenda, and also make it concrete and practical for governments. So we'll start at the global level. We have put in place the Global Food System Summits every 2 years to take stock and accelerate food systems that are sustainable and resilient. Just as we have the regular COPs to engage the progress and assess the progress on addressing climate change. Last year's Food System Summit, the stock-taking moment, we managed to build a critically important political momentum here. We had 21 heads of states, and governments have sent more than 125 ministers from 182 delegations. So the whole world really came together through this stock-taking moment. So when we talk about food system transformation, we can see that it's something that is really becoming a very visible item on the global agenda. And one of the very prominent examples of this was during the COP28, where the president put food system transformation on the global climate agenda, inspiring 159 world leaders to endorse a groundbreaking declaration on sustainable agriculture, resilient food systems, and climate actions. The Food System Hub was set up back in 2022 to sustain the global food system momentum, and that's where I'm working, and also to serve countries through coordination and facilitation of support action to translate the national pathways into actions. We also have these food system coalitions that are really groups of organizations from the UN, from development partners, from academia, private sector, CSOs, and other partners that come together to challenge business as usual and champion an integrated systemic approach at scale to address some of the specific issues of food systems. Next slide, please. So what kind of instruments do we have at national level? Well, we have these national pathways. And we should remember that food system, just like nutrition, is a policy area that does not have an institutional home, but that cuts across sectors such as agriculture, nutrition, climate resilience, supply chain logistics, and so forth. And it's therefore critically important that we have a strong national plan that details how food systems can become more sustainable and resilient. And this is what these national pathways are. Most of these pathways, around 100 of them, were submitted back in 2021 as part of the Food System Summit. But from that time and today, we have 24 governments that have developed new pathways. So it shows it's really a continuous process. And we also have 15 governments that have updated the pathways after the summit. So this really signifies that the food system agenda and the pathways is something that is not happening for one moment and then governments are forgetting about it, but it's really something that is very central in the national development plans right now. Governments has also embraced the food system dialogues, where participants range from all levels of government officials, farmer representatives, CSOs, private sector, women and youth, and so forth. And they come together as a good practice national consultation and planning process for development of these national food system pathways and plans. And the fact that we now have 155 countries that have a national food system convener, which is a government-appointed system, food system lead and champion, is also a critical element in the food system architecture, as these national food system conveners are helping in advancing the food system agenda, embedding into the national plans, into the development plans, into the sector plans. The last point here is the 3FS tools. Now, without governments being able to know how much financing goes to food system at country levels, it's difficult to really understand where we are, where we need to go to advance the food system agenda. So countries have now started to deploy the 3FS tool, the financing flow to food system tool that has been developed by the Hub, by IFAD and the World Bank, to track how much food financing is going to food systems, which areas of the food system finance is it going to, and where are the financial gaps when it comes to meet national priorities for food system transformation? Next slide, please. So one of the outputs of the Food System Summit last year was the Secretary General's call to action for accelerated food system transformation. It stressed the importance of incorporating food system transformation into national policies. And as you can see here in green, about more than 2/3 of countries have actually incorporated the pathway priorities for food system transformation into the national laws, into the national policies and sector plans, setting up multi-sector, multi-stakeholder food system governance structures. We have, as of last year, 70% of countries that have set up these governance structures to ensure that there is a strong and coordinated political leadership behind food systems. Investing in science, data, technology, continue doing food system dialogues, as 50% of the countries have done. Also engaging the private sector and business communities to ensure an accountability. And finally, also ensure access to finance. We have 40% of countries that have developed investment plans now for food systems. The call to action also called for the convergence of food systems and climate actions. And that leads me to the last slides I have here, which is an example of one of those initiatives coming out from the Food System Hub. Next slide, please. And next slide. So this convergence initiative is coming out from the Secretary General's call to action, and the government is now focusing on implementation of the Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems, and climate actions that was endorsed by 459 countries. And this declaration is calling for integration of food, climate, and nutrition, and food security of all, conserving, protecting, and restoring nature, and ensuring decent livelihoods for people, but also integrating water management with food systems and reducing climate harmful impacts. So we are essentially shifting the emphasis of the climate work. So it's not just about mitigation and adaptation, but it's about adapting food systems so that they are resilient through the climate change and conflicts. Next slide, please. So the goal of the national convergence process is to encourage cross-sector alignments that contribute to national food system visions to the realization of the Paris Climate Agreement. And this convergence initiative accompanies national convergence processes through the convening of stakeholders from multiple sectors and disciplines for expert briefings, sharing of lived experiences, structured dialogues, and extensive collaboration. Next slide, please. Now, what are the main objectives of this initiative? Well, the first one is really to establish and strengthen the existing governance platforms and bring together government officials and partners that work on food systems with those who work on climate actions. Secondly is to develop a national convergence action plans as a multidimensional framework for the objective to coordinate actions towards improved outcomes. And thirdly, to support the implementation of programs, projects, and initiatives that reflect convergence and collaboration between multiple stakeholders across different sectors. Next slide, please. Now, we have to ask ourselves, always with these kind of initiatives, next slide, please, what does success look like? For us, this is really a matter of first building long and trusting relationship with national conveners and accompany them in the climate action. Secondly, that we have food system priorities and transformation incorporated into the national adaptation plans, into the national determined contributions, while at the same time we have climate actions integrated into the national food system plans and pathways. And thirdly, we would like to see countries at the next Food System Summit next year showcase that these two areas have been integrated. So that really concludes my presentation. Thanks again for giving me the opportunity to speak at this event.
Thank you so much, Mr. Helms, for your presentation, elaborate but interesting presentation, apprising us of the food systems coordination hub, what the work that is doing with national governments. And that's really commendable. Thank you so much. My next speaker is Mr. Ruhiza Jean Boroto, Senior Land and Water Officer at FAO. He develops and manages the global framework on water scarcity in agriculture in the context of climate change, a partnership established in 2017 and hosted by FAO. Mr. Boroto, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I have prepared a poem that I will read and interpret imperfectly, but I hope you'll get the message. You received enough information in terms of numbers, initiatives, and so forth. So, climate has changed, and it is still changing. Times have changed, and they are still changing. Technology is fast changing our lives. Knowledge is increasing every day, while some of this knowledge is also being lost. The world population is on the rise, and the geographical distribution is fast changing at all scales, from urban to rural areas. Some countries' population will increase, other countries' population will decrease, with most people aging. This affects our future actions. More food needs to be grown as the population grows on a land that is being degraded by droughts, by salinity, by desertification, by urbanization, by pollution. And we have to grow the food with less water. Yes, more and more water is indeed too little. Other times it's too much, causing flooding and havoc, destroying infrastructure, destroying crops. Droughts lead to crop failure. Salinity affects land and water, leading to land degradation, loss of biodiversity, loss of soil biodiversity, loss of nutrient content, loss of productivity. No action could result in the collapse of vital agri-food systems. No action will result in hunger. No action will result in poverty. Hence, the value and significance of today's event. And so, bold actions are required, such as along the nexus: water, energy, food, and ecosystems, called the WEFE. But, and talking to an Indian audience, don't over-abstract groundwater because of cheap energy. Actions are required for conserving soil moisture, such as with intercropping between cover crops and other crops. If we do irrigation, let us ensure that each drop counts for more crops, for more nutritious food, but also for the economic return. Therefore, the question rises: drip irrigation? Responsible drip irrigation? If so, let us analyze the benefits. Let us make sure the beneficiaries are empowered. And let us think about technologies that are adapted to their context. Talent agriculture, the use of halophytes, it is relevant for small island developing states. It is relevant for inland countries. It's relevant for coastal countries affected by seasonal monsoon. Safe reuse of wastewater, drought-resilient crops, hydroponics, multiple use of water systems. What about indigenous knowledge? Whatever we do, let people be at the center of our actions. Let the government, who are the ultimate responsible for the well-being of the population, take action. Such action include accounting, monitoring, use of technology, invest invest smartly, build capacity to empower communities in order to build resilient food systems. Most of all, and this is where I speak from the Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, most of all, let us collaborate. No one has the solution alone. Partnerships are key to the future. Together, governments and intergovernmental agencies, international organizations such as UN agencies, IFIs, research and academia, civil society and NGOs, private sector organizations and foundations, all together, we can change these challenges into an opportunity for food security and for climate change. I invite you to enter on your Google WASAG, the Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, and you'll see all the work that we are doing under the Land and Water Division of FAO. And I look forward to engaging you further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Boroto, for bringing us the information related to water scarcity in agriculture sector and the global framework, which is working on that. Thank you so much. Last but not least, our next speaker is Dr. Edrico H. Offren, WHO representative in India. Dr. Offren comes with a rich experience of over 2 decades in public health, mostly in WHO Southeast Asia region. His extensive experience and expertise over critical issues impacting health of people in the 11 member countries, including India. He holds a Doctor of Medicine from the University of Philippines and a Master's in Public Health from Hebrew University, Hadassah, Israel.
I thank the India Water Foundation for organizing this event, and I'm pleased to deliver this message on behalf of the World Health Organization. It is important to highlight the impacts and interlinkages between climate change, hunger, and poverty, and more importantly, to identify transformative solutions. We are increasingly experiencing climate change in the form of extreme weather events, with heat waves, flash floods, and intense precipitation. But what doesn't get enough attention is its impact on health, hunger, and poverty. Climate change threatens food security through its impact on agricultural yields. Changes in temperature and precipitation patterns can reduce crop productivity, and extreme climate events can disrupt food production and supply chains. This leads to food shortages and increased prices, which affects vulnerable populations the most. Lack of access to nutritious food leads to poor health and frequent illnesses. Catastrophic medical expenses and loss of income from inability to work, in turn, affects health, education, and productivity. This creates a vicious cycle of poverty and hunger, not just for individuals, but for families and for future generations. We live in a world where the COVID-19 pandemic has widened economic, health, and social inequities and slowed progress towards Sustainable Development Goals 2030. The climate crisis is continuing to impede this progress. With global warming projected to cross 2.5 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, we must not lose our sight from the 2015 Paris Agreement goal of keeping temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Countries must lower emissions by 42% by the end of this decade to meet this goal, as per the latest UN Environment Programme's Emissions Gap Report 2023. To build back a better, more resilient world, we must address the key causes of climate change by adopting a multifaceted and integrated approach, and at the same time develop climate adaptation measures for sectors to cope with the changing climate. We need solutions that are holistic and address the underlying systemic issues that perpetuate these conditions. The government of India has adopted the whole of government multisectoral approach for mitigating climate change and protecting health while ensuring the country's economic development is not impacted. India has prioritized strengthening universal health coverage through Ayushman Bharat to promote health and increase access to essential healthcare services, including cashless hospitalization for the most vulnerable so as not to have financial hardship. This includes preventive, promotive, curative, and rehabilitative health services. Social protection systems such as cash transfers and food assistance programs have helped reduce poverty and hunger. Implementing nutrition interventions such as midday meals is contributing to lower malnutrition in children who are our future. India's commitment on climate action is evidenced on several fronts, be it setting up the International Solar Alliance, Swachh Bharat or Clean India Mission, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana to provide clean cooking fuel, Jal Jeevan Mission to provide piped water to rural homes, National Clean Air Program, to name just a few. Digital India is strengthening online infrastructure and increasing internet connectivity to enhance agricultural productivity, improve health outcomes, and provide education and training. Investing in capacity building of communities for climate adaptation, sustainable agriculture, and health promotion empowers them to take proactive steps tailored to local needs and contexts. This enhances the effectiveness and sustainability of interventions. Addressing these issues requires integrated approaches that combine health, nutrition, and economic development strategies. Policies that improve access to healthcare, ensure food security, and provide economic support can break the cycle of poverty, hunger, and poor health. Collaborative actions at international and national levels for promoting sustainable and resilient solutions, ensuring health for all, leveraging digital technology, and engaging and empowering communities can lead to significant progress towards ending poverty and achieving a more equitable and sustainable future for all. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Mr. Offren, for speaking on behalf of WHO and presenting, again, some good initiatives and remarkable works done by Government of India for water, health, as you've explained in your address. Thank you so much. And I thank all my speakers today. Any quick closing comments from any one of you? Mr. Satya Tripathi, Dr. Tripathi, any quick closing comments from you? Dr. Nagesh Kumar?
No, I think yeah, I think all of the presentations and discussions in this session were very rich, and they contributed to our better understanding of the linkages between climate change and poverty and hunger, and how to kind of find solutions to create a better future, more sustainable and inclusive future for all the people in the developing world, especially. And I think there are many solutions which have been offered by the participants. So I'm sure this is the follow-up actions by India Water Foundation on keeping this dialogue alive would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. And Dr. Tripathi, any closing comment from your side? Mr. Helms, any quick closing comment?
Yeah, no, I also just want to echo what was said before. It has been a very, very rich and diverse set of presentations here. It really shows the complexity of this very broad agenda that you have put ourselves and yourself up for here. I hope that we more than just delving into all the complexities of the problems, also were able to give some examples of solutions to what can be done. And I really feel that most of the participants here also were very solution oriented, and everyone is really working the best that they can within their respective disciplines. So again, I just want to thank you for allowing me to join this high-level dialogue here, and wish you good luck in taking some of these recommendations and insights and learnings forward. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. It was our privilege to have you all here today. Dr. Kumar, any closing comments from your side?
Yes, thank you, Sweta. Fundamentally, the longer governments wait to tackle climate change through ambitious mitigation, finance, and adaptation actions, the worse the impacts and the higher the cost. In the financial terms, climate change presents new, dynamic, and significant challenges to already poor and vulnerable populations. They are part of the long-term solutions and should be empowered and equipped with better information sources and alternative livelihood options that tackle changing rainfall pattern into an account. What is important, key to human development under a changing climate is ensuring that livelihoods and food system are sustainable, socio-economic development, and the adaptive capacity of the populations ultimately determine the impact of uh, key to human development as changing, ensuring that livelihoods and food are sustainable. So, as a societies develop and change, so will their capacities to adapt to climate-related risks. But lasting solution will take more than local people and the communities working to fix the problems. It will take a concerted and purposeful international effort to tackle foster resilience to climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. After hearing to the galaxy of speakers who've spoken today in this crucial dialogue, I can say that policy making has a clear role to play in anticipating and addressing the interlinked challenges of climate change, poverty, and hunger. A clear pathway for action is to reduce the vulnerabilities of communities most at risk by targeting poverty and hunger. Investments in implementing disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation strategies are needed, including in data and technology for early warning systems. Social protection coverage is essential in improving the resilience of vulnerable populations. I'll stop in between because Dr. Tripathi has joined again. So, Dr. Tripathi, any quick closing comments from your side?
No, I was here only, but just stepped out.
No.
Well, I think, I mean, having listened to all the speakers, the essence of what catches my attention is that experts from very diverse sectors are clearly engaged in this in the strongest possible way, and one certainly hopes that this helps and supports the millions of actors across the planet. We are just a few that have gathered here to either share thoughts or to listen to each other, but the millions of actors, stakeholders that are doing this on a daily basis, I think they can take great comfort from the fact that there's a lot of interest and drive to really do the best we can. It is clearly falling short, as we have seen from the reviews last year and also the ones that were reviewed this year. So I would like to sign off with the hope and appreciation, hope that we do more, and appreciation for all the millions of stakeholders around the world that are doing things under very challenging circumstances. These are not the easiest of times, because countries, especially of the global north, they are very generous with their resources in terms of how they support development programs across the planet, either through bilateral or multilateral aid. But the multiple wars that are happening now takes away hundreds of billions of dollars from the multilateral and bilateral aid mechanisms. And that has a telling effect on how we are approaching the achievement of the SDGs. So these are very challenging times. And so more appreciation for the stakeholders globally in what they are doing under very difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi. And definitely what you've said, the war is having its toll not just on the billions, but on lives of children, women, and climate change also. It's, exacerbating climate change. So what all speakers have stressed on in this dialogue is that social protection coverage is essential in improving the resilience of vulnerable populations, sustainable agricultural practices, and food system approaches. Inclusive employment pathways for green and decent jobs and social protection systems aimed at sustaining livelihoods have become more critical than ever before. Strengthened rural-urban linkages and infrastructure would create economic opportunities for adding value through the supply chain and also preventing people from migrating from the rural parts of the country, to the urban areas. Well-designed, social protection systems play a critical role in addressing the interlinked challenges of climate change, poverty, and hunger by reducing the vulnerability of poor people to climate change. In the wake of extreme weather events, such systems can deliver immediate relief to those in need and prevent others falling into poverty. Tailoring investments, including those that are climate change related, to better target poverty, inequality, hunger, promoting inclusive technology and innovation to ensure that transformative opportunities and benefits reach poor and vulnerable people, including by facilitating access to affordable technology, promoting knowledge sharing and skill creation, and tailoring solutions to specific needs and contexts. Enhancing cooperation and multi-stakeholder coordination across sectors, as very rightly Mr. Helms mentioned in his presentation, what the UN Food Coordination Hub has been doing to promote dialogue and consensus building within and among countries and scale up and replicate best practices and lessons learned across the globe. So this is what I would like to say at the end of this dialogue. I thank all of you dignitaries. India Water Foundation is grateful to all of you for taking out time from your extremely busy schedules for us in gracing this event to deliberate on such a crucial topic. I once again thank the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, Japan Development Cooperation Agency, and Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet for supporting this event and coming together with us. Thank you, my wonderful online audience, for some very interesting remarks and couple of questions. We shall get back to you with answers shortly. Thank you, everyone, and have a very good evening or afternoon or a morning and a day as per your time zones. Thank you so much. Namaskar.